Well, I was gonna say, I mean, it sounds like we're about to differ, but like I was gonna say that it does.
Interesting take. Okay. What is going on, everyone? This is Ahmed Cheema here, live with the one and only Abdul Mannan. What we're doing today is something that we don't normally do, but since today GM released a new logo, and a lot of people sent us this logo asking for our thoughts on it, we thought let's take a minute and just dissect what's happening here, break down why a company would have, change their logo or do a rebrand or whatever we want to call this. Like, why would a company of this size that hasn't changed their logo in something like 30, 40 years, why would they decide now we want to change it? And then why did they change it to this logo that we're seeing here? For those of you that are just listening on audio, we are looking at the new GM logo. So, Abdul, now let's kick it off. What is going on here? What's happening? Can you give us some background on what we're looking at here?
So we're looking at a General Motors logo. For those of you guys who don't know or who aren't Michigan natives, General Motors is a company that owns a few different car brands, namely Cadillac, Chevrolet, GMC, and a bunch of other ones, but the main ones are those three. And so what we saw, or what people brought to our attention, was that they recently put out, I think it was a tweet or something, where they changed their logo to the one that we have on the screen right now for our visual listeners, for our YouTube listeners. And people were like, this is disgusting. I need a branding deep dive. Why did they do this? Some people were not a fan. Some people were a fan. We got mixed responses. But it's definitely something interesting to get
Okay,
into.
hold on. We did not get mixed responses. We
I
got
did.
okay. So I will say on the responses that I got, it was unanimous that everyone
Okay.
thinks it's a disgusting logo.
Yeah.
Everyone thought it was gross. Like, why would they do that? I had one person. I had one person that said, "Hey, that's actually pretty cool."
I had one person say it was pretty cool out of like what 10 responses, but then I had a couple that said it just looks like something else. They weren't positive or negative towards it.
Oh,
Um,
I had a lot of negative. I had a lot of negative, and then
yeah,
I
yeah,
had
for sure.
one.
I mean, they were negative leaning.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm actually, so if you want our opinion, clearly Chima's not a fan of it. So you want to call that non-unanimous consensus a unanimous
No.
consensus.
So hey, like, you're putting words in my mouth, right? So my opinion on this logo, I'm just saying the feedback I got
Okay.
was pretty negative.
Yeah.
The more I look at it, the more it grows on me. I am not a fan of the gradient. I
Yeah.
actually do think the actual logo itself, it's growing on me.
Yeah. I personally like the change. It's hard because I think it's hard for a lot of people because of how long it's been,
Mhm.
and such a history, especially for those people living in Detroit, Michigan, driving down, whatever downtown in Detroit, you see the Ren Center and you see the GM buildings and you see that logo. There's a lot of history associated with that image, and it's definitely hard for people from Michigan to kind of see that. And obviously, the history of the city itself is tied to General Motors. Um, but yeah, anyway, so we're here today to talk about, why a company would change. And I think, Chima, walk us through what you think General Motors is doing here with the change in logo.
So
Or
I'm gonna I'm
start
gonna go ahead.
start with what they're actually doing. Like why did they change the logo? Do you know anything about that?
Yeah, so I think you did a little bit more research, so I'll defer this to you a little bit. But my understanding is that this logo represents the company's shift to be fully electric by whatever date they have. I don't know off the top of my head what they committed to, but this is really just their way of signaling that, hey, this is an electric future. And if you notice, I know you'll probably dive into the intricacies of the logo, but the M now is also an E. I don't know if the little line under is an I, but it's
The
it's an E.
negatives the
E for
negative
energy.
space, if you look at the negative space in the logo, the negative space is the space created by everything that's not the main element of the logo. You see like a little plug silhouette, and that was purposeful. So I think someone pointed that out in your responses. They
Yep.
were accurate with that. So yeah, the point is they're going electric. They have a company-wide marketing campaign, visual campaign to signal to their employers, to corporate GM corporate, that we're switching directions.
Mhm.
And they've developed this new Altium platform, which is basically their new battery that is going to be charging their new electric vehicles like Hummer, their GM or their Chevrolet, or I think it's Buick, or one of them has an SUV called a Lyric. Um,
Mhm.
and so these Altium batteries are going to be powering their new electric vehicles. So they're signaling. So what I hear you saying is that they're signaling to their team that they're changing directions, and they're representing that change in direction through a change in visual identity.
Yeah. So here's my take. Here's my hot take on this. My opinion is that, like, in situations like this, if you look at it, like, what impact does a logo like GM really have on the end user? Like, when I'm talking about end user, I mean someone that's actually buying a car,
Hmm.
right? And I think it's very little impact. I think they probably don't even, like, I think right now they probably saw it in their feeds. They're like, oh my God, it's such a big deal. But really, like, they're not, when they buy a Cadillac, they're not seeing this logo. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
They're not seeing, when they buy a Chevy, they're not seeing this logo. They're still
for
seeing that
sure.
same Chevy logo that they're used to.
I don't
And
think
so,
they would even know unless GM didn't put it out. Like I didn't know. Someone reached out to us about it.
right,
So it's not
right.
something they're like they explicitly had to send it out to the general public.
Right. And so when I'm looking at this, I'm asking myself, what's the purpose behind changing the logo? And I think not just logo, but like your whole visual identity, really. Like, I think it represents their change in vision. And it's, we can talk about a logo that hasn't been changed in so long. Why now? Because, for a company to go from internal combustion engines to batteries, that's a pretty big shift,
A tipping
right?
point.
There we go. Right. So actually, before we get into that, right, let's go into Malcolm Gladwell, right? I thought it was funny how they brought in Malcolm Gladwell and they made sure he said tipping point in there. It just seemed
Yeah.
kind of extra. So what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, for those of you guys who don't know, Gladwell is an author of a few different books, mainly Tipping Point. He wrote
Outliers.
Outliers, Blink, all these books about sociology, psychology, and stuff. He's a writer, and he has his opinions on social changes and stuff. And Tipping Point, I think, is a book that talks about what are the factors in society that are considered agents of change. Who are the change producers? And so GM goes, they put out this commercial, they get Malcolm Gladwell to literally say in the video, in the audio of the commercial, to say that GM switching to electric is a tipping point in society, meaning that this is why
You
you
know, it'd be
laughing?
really funny
Yeah.
if it wasn't the tipping point, like if it didn't work. That'd be really funny.
We're yet to find out, but yeah. So that's why. So Malcolm Gladwell is the main guy. He behind the campaign. So GM got a few different what we've been calling brand ambassadors in the past few episodes that you'll hear about in the future as well as in the episodes in the past. But one of them was Malcolm Gladwell, and they got him to promote this campaign that they have, which is switching to General Motors. Um,
Right.
Going back to your point, Cheema, you were
Yeah,
talking
I was
about
gonna
yeah.
go right back to it. So, like, when we're talking about rebranding, redesigning, why now, right? So Malcolm Gladwell says this is a tipping point. It's a big shift, right? Like, regardless, however you look at it, this is a big shift for the company's vision and what they want to do in the long run, right? And so I think it was interesting. One of the lines in there, like, Malcolm Gladwell asked the guy, he was like, "Why are you guys doing this?" And the guy's like, "Well, frankly, it's just the right thing to do." I was like,
Yeah.
"All right, bro, cool story." But
Yeah.
anyway, GM hating aside, uh,
Yeah.
when you have a strategic shift in vision, I don't think it's necessary to change your logo, right? I
Mhm.
really don't think it's like a big deal. What I will say is this: like, what purpose does changing your logo actually serve? Like,
Mhm.
for your business need? Like, as a business, what am I getting out of changing this logo? And here's my take. I think what they're getting is free publicity, number one. Like, I don't think if they just said, hey, we're changing our vision to electric, and they didn't change the logo, they didn't change this, they didn't have this whole campaign with Malcolm Gladwell, I don't think I would have knew anything really about this quantum battery that you're talking about. You know what I mean? So
I think it goes
because they
back to
changed it,
why it's important to have the change in logo then.
what was that?
I think it just emphasizes the impact that changing a logo does have.
That's debatable, right? It's like free publicity, but
Okay.
they were gonna, they're doing the batteries anyway. Like,
Yeah.
so I'm saying, like, for your business's bottom line, does it actually impact it? Like, does publicity result in sales? Like, that's another conversation to be had. But
Mhm.
it does get you publicity, right?
Yeah.
Like, at least 3 people sent me this logo separately before I posted it on my Instagram and asked for some feedback. But like, that would not have happened had they kept that same logo and just said, hey, we want to go electric now. We
I
already
want
know
to.
all these car companies want to go electric.
Yeah. I want to dive into that a little bit more. Why do you think it is that it doesn't impact the end uh, customer?
So when I say it doesn't impact the end customer, what I mean is that, like, this logo, this change in logo doesn't affect them directly.
Hmm.
I mean, like,
And it's big.
I'm not buying a GM. I'm not buying anything as an
Yeah.
end
Yeah.
user who wants a car. I'm never going to buy anything with this logo or even with the old logo.
Exactly. It's
You
not
know
a
what I
touch
mean?
point that you interact with as a consumer of GM.
Exactly. Yep. So that's number one. So number one is free publicity. Number two, and I do think this is important, and I think people don't give this as much credit as it actually deserves, is that internally, it tells your team this is where we're headed,
Hmm.
right? And the same way that I found out about it through people, like, when you have a good marketing campaign like this internally, like, people see that, hey, our logo shifted, this changed, our website changed a little bit, there's a new colors going around, like, people start to notice, hey, things are changing, right? Whereas
Hmm.
if they kept the same logo, they kept everything, like, then it could have been like, I'm not saying that they can't actually get electric without this logo, but it's a way to signal to your employees, like, hey, we are changing, and we
Hmm.
mean business. We
Yeah.
mean business so much that we changed the whole logo. You know what I mean? Like, it's
Yeah.
like what we always talk about is, like, when when it comes to, like, leadership, right?
Hmm.
You want your team to feel like when they raise a concern, you actually take action on it.
Hmm.
And one of the things you always have to remember is that even if you can't take action, you have to go follow up with them and let them know you actually tried, because the perception of you actually taking action is more important than the actual taking action.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because if your team perceives you as someone who I can come to and they'll take action, and Ahmed will take action, then they're gonna respect you.
Yeah.
So same way, like, hey, it's, when I say something, it means something,
Hmm.
because the perception that people have of me, right? And
Hmm.
so I'm not saying that's what it is. I'm saying that's the concept we're getting at.
Yeah.
But yeah, those are the 2 points that I believe why a rebranding like this is important, especially when it's a big shift like this. You got to think about a company like GM is a mature company, and things move very slowly. And it's not like some of the companies nowadays that are startup companies, like, you can change directions like this, that, the other thing. It's not even a big deal. Like the company that I work at, I'm not gonna mention any names, like, we probably change directions on, like, what our priorities are, like, 3 times in a week, or, like, sometimes, like, it feels like 3 times in a day. You know what I mean? It's like, we're focused on this, now we're focused on this, now we're focused on this. But companies like GM, and I haven't worked at GM, so I don't know, but my understanding is that it's a lot more hierarchy, a lot more bureaucracy, and it's a lot more slow moving towards whatever destination we're going at.
Hmm.
Whereas companies that are startups, they're going full speed at whatever destination. They're like, okay, that didn't work, now we're going here. And
Hmm.
so in an environment like this, signaling to your team that, hey, we're changing directions, we're going this way,
Yeah.
that's a big deal internally. And then externally, I think they have free publicity. Abdul Mannan, what are your thoughts?
I agree. Number one, you like you said, to signal the change, and number two, free publicity. Um, I'm of the opinion that changing the logo does have a little bit more of an impact on the impression that people have, right? We talk about brands and logos having impressions on people, right? Like, what is people's impression of your company, of your brand, of your product, of your service? So wherever GM uses this logo, the goal is to have that impact on them. So whether they're going to have auto shows or, revealing new Cadillacs, they're going to have this logo on the back, right? And the fact that it's changed, people are going to notice, and they're going to ask why. They're going to ask what's going on.
Do you
And
think
so,
so? So that's where I disagree with you.
whether consciously or subconsciously, it's happening.
You're talking about the end user. You're talking
Yeah,
about like me or you.
yeah. Well, so it depends. So like we talked about, right? Wherever the touch point is. So if you've never interacted with GM, which you probably never would, right? Then yeah, it probably wouldn't have an impact on you. But if you do happen to come across it, then you notice the change, is what I'm saying.
You notice the change. I'll give you that. Like if you're driving past the Rensen, you'll notice that like
Yeah, that big huge logo on the top of the building has changed. You're like, whoa,
But does it have the impact of like, hey, like that's cool, they're going electric now, or is it just like whatever?
No, I
My
think
thing. Go ahead.
well, I was gonna say, I mean, it sounds like we're about to differ, but like I was gonna say that it does.
Interesting take. Okay.
I guess we'll leave it up to the audience and see what they say.
Yeah.
But,
Hey, audience, all two listeners, let us know what you guys think. Like, do you think that
if the logo at the Rensen changed at the top of the building of the Rensen, what is your impression when you see it, when you see the new one?
so you're saying that the perception changes in a positive way?
Well, yeah, assuming people associate electric cars with positivity, because I'm from West Virginia and we're all about that coal energy stuff. So, our governor ran on his motto called "Jim never gave up on coal." Like that was his campaign. Like,
is that for real?
Yeah. we make fun of it, but yeah, they're still working with coal.
So,
but yeah,
my take on that is that it doesn't have a change in perception, but let's see what the audience thinks.
Yeah. All right. So you hit on two main points. Is there anything else that you want to talk about? We're gonna try to keep this short.
Yeah, let's try to keep this short. I don't have any other topics. Definitely did want to talk about the actual logo, dive into that a little bit more. That's your expertise. If you could kind of touch on the colors and what's going on here, lowercase from uppercase, like what's going on there. If you could touch on that.
So one of the main points, one of the main feedbacks that we got, everyone hated the gradient. They're like, what's going on with the gradient? Some people said the gradient feels like the gradient and the bevel, which is like kind of how the logo is popping out at you, has some depth. That's the bevel. Some people are saying that's too old school. It's like 2006, Microsoft Word, stuff like that. Now, what's interesting about this is that current companies right now are still using, are not only still using, are introducing gradients, right? Instagram came out with a gradient recently, 2018, right? The colorful rainbow-esque gradient. iPhone has been using gradients for a long time. I think since 2017, 2018, since their new lines of MacBook Pros before the M1 chip came out. So gradients aren't new. Companies have been using them. It's because they use them well that they blend into their design, that it doesn't like stick out at you like a sore thumb. And one of the reasons why I think this gradient sticks out at us is because it doesn't consider colors that mesh well together. They might be next to each other on a color wheel, but the dark blue and the light blue are just too strongly opposite without an intermediate color in between. So that dark blue that we see right down the middle, I think that's what's bothering people's eyes, especially with a white background.
Right.
When you think about gradients and choosing gradients for your design, you want to choose colors that are similarly closer together. Or if you're going to choose colors that are farther apart from each other on a color spectrum, you want to have a couple of intermediary colors, and that will blend the other two together. And the lack of doing that is a result like this. And I have a small feeling that GM is going to change that gradient a little bit as the years go on. But that's something for
us. This is on the record. Let's see what happens. That'd be interesting.
And then a couple
if it does happen, we can pull a clip from 2021 Abdul Mannan predicting GM. You know what I
There
mean?
you go. Yeah, I think the dark blue in the middle should have been switched out with the bottom lighter blue, the sky blue. Now, in terms of why they went with blue, someone asked that as well. They said that it's an impression of clear skies, which is representative of zero emission energy that they're going for with their cars in the near future. I get that. It's kind of cool. They've used gradients from the natural world of clear skies. You talked about George Orwell. I don't know if we want to talk about that right now, but that's what they were going with the blue color.
Hey, one thing. So first off, I don't remember this George Orwell point, but I did want to highlight a couple things, if you could touch on a little bit. So the old logo was a very boxy, and even the letters, if you look at the M, very sharp on the edges, and even the line was very, everything is very hard. Whereas if you look at the new one, there are some points, but if you look at the overall, the square, it's actually rounded,
Yeah.
and there's actually more rounded points in the M, in the G, and it's lowercase too. So what do you think's going on there?
Generally, we like to hypothesize, but I was just doing a little bit of research, and they straight up told us they're going with the lowercase letters and the rounded edges to symbolize
Good
uh,
morning.
modernity and
Okay.
inclusiveness.
Wait,
I
okay,
know
hold on,
that
hold on. Wait, what? Say that again.
modernity and inclusiveness.
So how, okay, I get the rounded edges, but
Yeah.
how does lowercase have anything to do with that?
So I think lowercase are more welcoming. That was another thing that they talked about
Ah,
in some of the research. Lowercase generally, you see it on logos that tend to be more welcoming, whereas GM, and this is an interesting move for a logo that's only used in executive environments, right? Like corporate environments. So that's what you see on the left side. But now they're saying, I think what they want, and one of the things that they introduced, not only with the visual identity, is a slogan, a campaign slogan, a marketing slogan, which is everybody in. And they're basically calling everybody to go all in on electric energy, and they're inviting people. And so the lowercase letters is inviting. That's the goal
gotcha.
there. I like it. I think it's good. I don't see how they could. I don't see how your average customer of Cadillac, Chevrolet, Buick, GMC is gonna have to relate to this logo at all. Like you said, it doesn't impact them, and so they're not gonna see this logo anywhere. So I don't know if that is necessarily a good decision or a bad decision, but overall, I think it's a pretty cool change.
Yeah, for sure.
And I think
The other thing, real quick, I wanted to mention that's not really related, and I don't think this is really an important point at all, but I did want to throw it in there for the audience to hypothesize and speculate and have fun with it. But if you guys look at Nikola's logo, that is a very turquoise logo. And so I
who's
would have
Nicola?
thought, and you guys know the story with Nikola and GM, where Nikola, essentially GM invested in Nikola. Turns out Nikola didn't actually have a real product, and there's a whole big scandal. You would think that they would have wanted to distance themselves as far away from as possible from Nikola, but the logo, the color is actually pretty close. So interesting. But
Where
yeah,
when did this happen? When did this interaction happen?
last year.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, they invested, I
That's
think, a couple
interesting.
years
Yeah.
ago. I think the scandal happened when like everyone found out, I think sometime last year, but it's pretty recent.
Yeah. Yeah.
You see that GMX Nikola thing? That's from when it happened.
Yeah. This one right
Yep, exactly.
here.
All
All
right, do you
right.
have anything else or you want to wrap it up?
No, I think we can wrap it up. It was a pretty good episode.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I know the audience is probably thinking like this is the most sloppy thing they've ever done in the world, but we wanted to get our thoughts out. It's not going to be edited. I'll be honest. We want to get it out as soon as possible and really just give you guys our raw thoughts on what's going on. So let us know what you guys think. I'm really interested to hear your opinions and thoughts and what you have to say about this. But yeah, thank you for listening. Take care, guys. We'll see you next time.